Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round on the Middle of the Pack Racing League Cruising USA GR86 Championship for 2023. And today marks round 7 of 12 as we are here in the city of Detroit, in the state of Michigan, for the rolling to the third round of the Midwest State Cup. Of course, this series being broken up into a series of 3 cups across the 12 rounds, and we're in the second of the 3 cups in the Midwest Cup. And last time out in Mid-Ohio, we got to see tense racing action up and down the infamous Ohio State course. But with this being our second street circuit of the 2 available in this series, the tensions could not be higher, and indeed the risks and rewards could not be greater at stake when it comes to our drivers are racing around the Belle Isle Park circuit. As our drivers get ready to go racing today, let's take you through a little bit of housekeeping. Times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinated Time at UTC. Our times are as follows. In just under 30 minutes time, we'll be going into the qualifying session, 15 minutes in duration, and we'll tell you about how our drivers will make their way out onto circuit in their respective classes in short order. And after qualifying is complete, with track position being ever so key today, we'll be heading to the grid for our one and only sprint race of the day, 30 minutes in duration. And there we'll see our drivers at 5:30 take to the circuit in anger and look to score big and potentially convert that pole position, if they manage to achieve it, into the race win. We should point out to you the racing action you're seeing on screen today is post-round. This racing action is not live. It occurred as of earlier this week, back on Wednesday the 1st of March 2023. We'll bring it to you as if it were live on Saturday the 4th of March 2023. In the commentary booth you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be looking to bring you the racing action as close as possible as if it were to the raw live experience for you girls and guys at home. And what does that mean? Well, that means that in terms of the racing action, I do not know what happens in the practice, the qualifying, or the final race session. Indeed, if you were one of the drivers who participated in this race, we do ask that you avoid any spoilers, whether you're in the Twitch or the YouTube chat. We have 2 chats available and 2 broadcasts running simultaneously, but we do ask that you avoid presenting any spoilers. Now, in regards to tuning, you're tuning in via one or 2 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. First, if you are on YouTube, you can go to youtube.com and search for TX141TX, alternatively Paul Walsh. Alternatively, if you are on Twitch, you can go to twitch.tv/TX141. But with introductions out the way, let's come on to our calendar so far and what still lies in wait. Indeed, we can see now as we make our way into the second half of the championship with Mid-Ohio last week. Now, as we transition into that second half, will the rounds that come and await us are still going to be ever-present threats to our drivers' championship campaigns or major opportunities for those who are low on points. Because after today at Belle Isle, we'll be wrapping up the Midwest Cup in round number 8 at Road America, making our way from the state of Michigan to the state of Wisconsin for the picturesque Elkhart Lake Circuit. And there we'll see in our feature race, the second of 3 features on the calendar on the 8th of March, our drivers will look to do their very best to manage the strategy and bring it on home at a circuit that is a classic on the American calendar. Then we're taking a week's break before making our way into the final cup of the season, the Southern State Cup, a celebration of all circuits in the Southern States, and we kick that off on the 22nd of March in round number 9 at Road Atlanta in the state of Georgia. Indeed, if you're looking for the ultimate roller coaster ride of racing, Road Atlanta has you covered, and even more so, and more on that in due course. After that, we'll then be making our way over to the state of Alabama for the Barber Motorsports Park in round number 10 in the second of the 3 sprints in the Southern State Cup on the 29th of March, before wrapping up all of our sprint races in round number 11 at the Sebring International Raceway Circuit in the state of Florida, which is where we'll be remaining for the remainder of the series, and that'll be on the 5th of April. And in our season at conclusion will take place in round number 12 at the Daytona Road Course in the state of Florida there, and what better way to bring it all to a close at our final feature of the season on the 12th of April. But of course, that's what lies ahead, and let's tell you a little bit about what has laid ahead in the past. We started off, of course, back in round number 1 on the 11th of January with the Big State Cup, a celebration of the largest states of the US of A, and indeed this whole series been a celebration of motorsport in the US of A with the recently introduced on iRacing and also in the real world for 2023, the Toyota Gazoo Racing North America GR86 Cup machine, all yours in real life for a grand total of $1 million, and that would enable you to compete in the official GR Cup Series for 2023 in the North American continent. But indeed for our drivers, they'll be racing on the virtual simulator, and they kicked it all off at Watkins Glen in the state of New York in what was a consideration of MPRL meets NASCAR, and then we took our taxis to what was the California state, indeed for the Laguna Seca Raceway, or the WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca as it's known, in full for round number 2 in the second sprint there on the 18th of January. Indeed, what a thriller it was at Laguna Seca. We saw plenty of battle in action, indeed many a driver coming a cropper at the corkscrew, and in round number 3 we made our way to Long Beach, downtown Long Beach, for our first of 2 street circuits, of course the second one being at Belle Isle today. But at Long Beach we got to see not too many incidents in the opening lap, but as time wore on and tyre degradation started to take an effect, many of our drivers ended up meeting the walls there at Long Beach, and it was all about survival on the 25th of January, and we wrapped up the Big State Cup back on the 1st of February with a Circuit of the Americas in the state of Texas, and what an absolutely a nail-biter of a race it was across all three classes. Indeed, we saw a good number of primes, such as Logan McKenzie, really shine high in the racing there. Then we took a week's break before round number 5 kicked off our Midwest Cup, a celebration of the Midwest states, and that was in the state of Indiana at the much-loved Indianapolis Circuit. And on the 15th of February, we saw there a bit of a mix-up with the fuel regulations for the cars, leading to all our drivers needing to come into the pits alternatively to a huge amount of fuel saving, and it was Alberto Alvarez in particular who gauged it right in the Prime class to jump ahead of Logan McKenzie by taking that pit stop rather than trying to make it to the end unscathed on fuel capacity. And last time out, of course, we were at Mid-Ohio, and there we saw in the madness of the S's, our drivers battling very hard, and indeed everybody really putting up the fight. And in the AM class, it was Fernando Takahashi who stole the show, keeping it clear of his rivals despite their very best intentions, including the likes of Mark Senegal and Samuel Bernardi. But as we look forward to today, we also look forward to our championship standings, and let's give you an update on those going into this round. We start with our Drivers' Championship standings, and this is overall and considering the Pro Division. And we can see here Jason Landry leading the way, now going into the second half of the season on 249 points to Aaron Lars 211. Now this round is a critical juncture for Jason Landry. Should he make it another win with an insatiable desire for wins, he will effectively have a one-round advantage going into the remaining rounds over his peers, with there being drop scores in effect as well. For Landry, it will mean that his advantage gives him the opportunity, if he has a difficult round, he can drop an entire round and not lose that championship lead. Aaron Lahr, however, looked to keep him honest, but needs to keep in mind that James Kye is not too far behind, with a separation there of what is a grand total of 24 points. And as he inches ever closer, in fact, my mathematics is completely incorrect there. It's a separation of what is 14 points. There we go, that's better. And the gap between the two of them continues to close up. Close behind is Mika Hendricks, 4 points off at 193, with John Butler in P5 there, 2 points further behind on 191. And we see those gaps of twos and ones continue with James Logston in P6 at 189, only 1 point ahead of Francois Schink, with Tanner Dibble, John Lauzon, and Jerome Bajulaz completing the top 10. And it's Kyle Ranieri who falls outside the top 10 for the first time this season, only based on result countback versus Jerome Bajulaz at 153 points apiece, and Matej Georgiou in P12 there on 76 points. We then come on to the Prime standings overall, and we can see here Logan McKenzie leading the way on 215 points, and another win to his record book, meaning that Logan McKenzie now really starting to become one of the firm favourites in the Prime class and looking to be the major championship contender, albeit Alberto Alvarez will have something to say about that. And it has been Alvarez who's had the pace in qualifying, but it's been McKenzie who's had the pace in the race of the consistency, and the two need to find the opposite of one another's spectrums in order to get the perfect combination. Alberto Alvarez, you could say, has also had some of the worst luck in terms of the two of them, and therefore sitting in P2, only 13 points clear of Craig Parks. He'll be looking to try and close the gap to McKenzie and break away from Parks. Parks, conversely, has really come alive over the last couple of rounds, and particularly last time out at Mid-Ohio, closing that gap to the top two and standing in P3, a sizable advantage over Edwin Offrey, who in turn has a 15-point advantage over Jonathan Ballard, who had a great performance last time out. And outside the top 5, Kirk Lane there, only 5 points off, but 4 clear of Samuel Curran, with Donald Seeper, Ilya Speaker, and Milan Harris completing the top 10. And then best of the rest, Adrian Fedorowski ahead of Lee Porter and Carlos Hathcock, with Jermaine Warren at John Wilding and Zach Saunders yet to get points on the board. And of course, we should point out that Jermaine Warren has sacrificed his racing responsibilities for this season, and he is in race control for all of our rounds. And thank you very much to Jermaine for making that sacrifice. We really do appreciate it. Now, coming on to the AM class, meanwhile, we can see Fernando Takahashi in the lead by 11 points over Daniel Cedeno. Well, Takahashi last time out your winner, and really having to keep one step ahead of the field with Cedeno, Mark Senegal, Dan Vitcher, Samuel Bernardi, and Ian Henneberry, all with a possibility of winning at Mid-Ohio. But it was Takahashi who steered clear of danger in order to take the win. But that's how close it is in terms of pace. And when you have 41 points, or you could really say there, what is a grand total of 42 points separating the top 7, because we have to keep in mind that Nick Bader's not too far off the hunt for a top 5 position. It does mean that you have an ideal recipe for the ultimate championship battle. And indeed, we have seen the points oscillate, and all 7 of our drivers there, all in contention at this time. Will Gus Blondell only 10 points off there on 109 points. Will Clare, Glenn Bratton, and Jack Davis, who complete the top 10, but jointly on 94 points there. But Davis behind Bratton based on result countback. 5 points off the top 10 and looking to break in. Vilman da Costa there on 89, 7 clear of Roger Ganesh, with Rodney Falcon in his use, or P13, P14, and PG Christensen only a further point behind in P15. Then it's Dan Ocaranza, Spencer Cockayne, Avon Dorsey, Dave Hernandez, and Albert Brand who complete our standings. And of course, Avon Dorsey, a debutant last time out and having a brilliant start to his championship campaign, albeit not quite able to pull off what was looking to be at one point the win at Mid-Ohio, but Dorsey definitely won for all of our drivers inside the top 7 to watch out for, because they slip, they may just lose points to Dorsey, who could jump up the standings very rapidly. But as we then come to the overall championship team standings, we can see that Sunday GT Turtles are leading the way by only 6 points over Beaver Buzz Energy, and these two top teams right now are really breaking away from the rest of the field, but the rivalry continues to go down to the wire. Team Bear Pope now in P3, moving up to there based on the results on the previous round, and 372 points to DNA Motorsports is 366. The gap's only 6 points, and it could swing either way tonight. Middle of the pack Jedi, or MOP Jedi as they're known in short, on 350 points there, wrapping up the top 5 and clearly showing a distinction between the top 5 and the rest of the field, with Pan Am Racing in P6 on 275 points, only 4 clear of Bear Pope 0, with Hassel's Motorsports, Rockefeller Racing White and Rockefeller Racing Pink completing the top 10. Middle of the pack Sif in P11, best of the rest, and lastly it's QZ Motorsports who wrap up the standings. And as we come onto the Cup Championship standings for the Midwest Cup, we're of course now on round 3 of 4. We've had 2 rounds go so far. Jason Landry leads the way after 2 rounds in the Midwest Cup by what is there 10 points over Aaron Law, and is definitely looking to be on course to take the Midwest Cup next time out in round number 8 should things continue the way they are. But of course there's nothing certain in motorsport, and Lady Luck is a big factor as well, and Aaron Law will be hoping a little bit of luck comes his way today, with Jordan Butler not too far behind by 3 points off, and it's John Lauzon and Francois Schink who complete the top 5. But you can see how close it is between Lauzon, Francois Schink, James Logston, Jerome Bajulaz, and Mika Hendricks and Tanner Dibble, where we have that run from P4 to P9, or 6 drivers only separated by a margin of 14 points, and any one of those could be nipping at the heels of Jordan Butler after today. Carl Ranieri in P10 now on 38 points, and then we have best of the rest James Carr down 36 points, with Matej Georgi yet to compete in the Midwest Cup and yet to score points. We then come to the Pro-Am, so we can see Logan McKenzie leading the way by 20 points over Alberto Alvarez. The gap there continued to grow between the pair, and it really is a sign of how McKenzie really has found that run of form over the last couple of rounds. Alberto Alvarez, of course, will be looking to attack back tonight, and we do look forward to seeing how he can pull that off, with Samuel Cran there a further point behind, and really right now it's for Alvarez to keep Cran and also Jonathan Ballard at bay, and with Jonathan Ballard really joined the pace last time out in Mid-Ohio, could we see Ballard jump up into P2? Craig Parks in P5 on 53 points. The best part of what is their 9 points clear of Ilya Speaker, with Kirk Lane, Edwin Offred, and Donald Sepek completing the standings. And drivers yet to compete in the Midwest Cup in the Prime class are Adrian Fedorowski, Carlos Hathcock, Jermaine Warren, John Wilding, Lee Porter, Milan Harris, and Zach Saunders. We then come on to lastly the AM Cup standings, and we can see here Fernando Takahashi leading the way by 16 points over Dan Vitchuk, and Dan Vitchuk there in P2, well on merit, with Nick Bader 1 point behind, but you can see how close it is there to be the main runner-up rival, with Bader only a point ahead of Mark Senegal, and then we have 4 points to Ian Henneberry, who really came alive at Mid-Ohio, and Glenn Bratton a further, what is there, 9 points off, with then Daniel Sedino having a difficult last couple of rounds, dropping to P7 on 32 points, 8 points clear of Roger Ganesh, with Ines Usul and Avon Dorsey completing the top 10, and again that result from Avon Dorsey last time out really being reflective of his debut performance. Dave Hernandez, best of the rest there, 1 point off of the top 10, with Gus Blunder a further point down. There's Billman DaCosta and Spencer Cockayne who complete the standings, and Albert Brown, Christopher Tarango, Dan Ocaranza, Jack Davis and PG Christensen yet to compete in a round of the Midwest Cup. We then come on to our circuit for today then, and it is the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle. Located in the city of Detroit, in Wayne County of the state of Michigan in the United States of America. This circuit, as you can see from the circuit map provided to us by iRacing.com, thank you to them for their brilliant circuit maps and of course their wonderful simulator, is a circuit like no other when it comes to bumpy road surfaces. Raced by IndyCar from 2007 to 2022, but returning to the alternate Detroit City circuit as of 2023, this circuit consists of 14 corners, is fast, furious, and it's very hard hitting, because our drivers make their way across the timeline and into the right-hander of turn number 1. They'll need to balance the throttle and the brakes as they slide their way through turns 1 and 2 before charging down the first extended straight into turn 3. The first major overtaking zone in the battle to turn 3. Harder the brakes, our drivers will come into the sharp right-handed right-angle corner, and as they power out, they'll find the circuit becomes incredibly narrow as they make their way through the complex to turns 4, 5 and 6. Emerge from there unscathed and not hitting the walls. Indeed, those walls will loom large. Our drivers will make their way down the back straight and the curve back straight, the charge down towards turn number 7, whereas they head into the right-hander, they'll find it's a very sharp apex curve, and indeed hit the curb too high, and they may end up into the tyre barrier. But coming out of turn 7, they then go into the tight complex, they roll the way into turn number 8, and then it's the double left-hander at turns 9 and 10, before they brake sharply to turn number 11, and then followed up by the short run into turn 12, where we'll see the average apex speed continues to descend all the way to 12, but it opens back up at turn number 13, and it's a near flat-out charge through 14 to go on to the next lap. But indeed, there's going to be opportunities for overtaking, but through the corners it's mostly very tight with the walls being ever so close, and so track position will be key. But let's give you a quick reminder of our race rules. Of course, we can't go racing without rules, and in terms of setups, our driver shall run a fixed setup provided by the Middle of the Pack Racing League, or the MPRL as it's abbreviated to. Car fuel loads have been restricted to 35 litres for this round. In terms of qualifying, an open qualifying format shall be used lasting 15 minutes and split into 2 equal halves. The AM class shall take to the circuit for the first half, so for the first 7.5 minutes, and then they'll be called in, and we'll see the primes and the pros go out together for the second half to set the qualifying times. In terms of the sprint race itself, the race shall start via grid start, as is the tradition. Each driver shall have one fast repair available if they are involved in an incident that causes damage to their car. A driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 18 or more instant points, and should there be a major incident at the race start, a safety car may be deployed. Otherwise, the safety car shall not be deployed during the race, and that will be at the discretion of Jermaine Warren, of course. But that's enough rules, regulation, everything in between. I know what you're all here for. You're here for the racing, and as we look back to our pictures now, and our drivers making their way on around here, well, we are very close already to going into that qualifying session, as we see Milan Harris making his way out of the pit lane, and we're only 40 seconds to go. All drives absolutely fighting fit here. We can see in terms of the practice times on the time down the left-hand side, if we exclude Jason Landry's lap there of a 36-second lap, which is an invalid lap, I believe that's a track limit infringement where he's cut back to the pits. It is Mika Hendricks who's the fastest at the moment out there on what is a 1:44.29. It's the first time we've seen a different name from Landry's top the time tower in sub-time. So could we see a new overall pole sitter today? Well, we're going to find that out very shortly, because we are only brief moments away from qualifying, and he will be right back, ladies and gentlemen, because we will need to skip our iRacing replay file forward to make sure that the qualifying results are not spoiled on screen before the qualifying session gets underway. We'll be back in less than a minute. Alrighty, ladies and gents, without further ado, it is time for qualifying. Indeed, first up, RRM drivers, of course, will be making their way out of the circuit and really laying the rubber down, you could say, for the pros and the primes for later on in the qualifying session. But with the fact we've got quite a nice temperature today of what is in the region of about 36 degrees at track temperature. Indeed, let's just take a little look at those conditions as they currently stand as our drivers make the way on out. What we do see there on screen, it is an ambient temperature of 26 degrees centigrade and a track temperature of 37 degrees centigrade. Currently, it is a sign here it's a warm day, and therefore this circuit is going to rubber in quite quickly, and those optimal qualified times will come very rapidly. But as we do clear the weather statistics on the right hand side of your screen away and focus forward our drivers making the way on around today, we also do say hello to a good number of you in the broadcast chat, including the YouTube chat to Jason Landry, who says woo broadcast time. Glad to have you with us, Jason. And also saying Lee Porter, race control, not Jermaine Warren. I do apologise there, get my names mixed up. There's always a moment where I do get something wrong there. Indeed, we'll call it a Walshism, much like the late Murray Walkerism, as they used to be known, or Murrayism. But there we've had a confirmation from what is there, Lee Porter in the Twitch chat as well, saying, oh, this is from Max LP80, I'm in race control, laugh out loud. Do apologise about that, chaps. But Lee Porter sacrificing his racing time, not Jermaine Warren, so we've got that all clarified up. But focusing on our drivers making the way on or around now, well, what does it take to set a good qualifying lap here at Belle Isle? Well, the key thing is you need to keep it out of the wall. Now, that may sound very obvious as our drivers get ready to go onto their first flying laps, but the key point about this is you need to find that balance between pushing hard and getting within millimetres of the wall. Alternatively, aggressively, making sure just to stay clear of the wall, and therefore knowing how wide the car is and how much speed you can carry from corner to corner. It's a bit of a balancing act in a street circuit. We saw at Long Beach, of course, some drivers not quite able to get close enough to those walls and therefore missing that lap time when they're not quite carrying up 1 to 2 miles an hour that they should be on to the next straight or in towards the next braking zone, and then those drivers will push a little bit too hard and end up making contact with the wall, and therefore everything becomes undone before they've been able to set the qualifying time. And indeed, some of you may recall, with the recent commencement of the GT World Challenge America that started off at St. Petersburg in Florida as of earlier this weekend, what we've seen at many a driver there get it wrong in St. Petersburg and end up putting the car to the barrier there. And indeed, it's the same principle in Detroit, in the fact, get it wrong and it ends up being an absolute disaster, and the car is out of the race before you've even got it into the race, because you'll be starting at the back of the field if you're not able to put those qualified times in. Now, thankfully, our drivers do have the ability to tow to the pits directly rather than having to have the car repaired, but there's a driver going round already. Oh, goodness me, and I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that was the 217 machine, and we're not quite sure who that was. In fact, I think it was we'll try to understand who went on around there, but one of our drivers definitely getting it wrong, and I think, in fact, it may have been one of our drivers there in the 237. I think it was Ian Henneberry, in fact, got it a little bit wrong coming out of the corner. In fact, Henneberry towards the end of the lap, but regardless, as we do try to figure out, I think it was we have had confirmation it was Dan Victor there getting it wrong. Victor in the 213 car, and as he makes his way back up to speed now, of course, the miracle of being able to be towed to the pits and taken back out is it doesn't cost him as much qualifying time. Indeed, in the real world, that would be his qualifying session done, dusted, and over. Indeed, quite the red flag, or at least a double yellow flag for a good number of our drivers as they made the way around, but he carries on here. But no, he's lost a lot of time and has got plenty of time to try and make up now with only a couple of minutes to go. But another knock to the wall there for Victor, and well, just not comfortable immediately here. But meanwhile, we look to your Championship leader of Fernando Takahashi as he makes his way on around through what is turns 7, 8 and into 9 and 10 now. And as he comes on down here, well, our first times are starting to come onto the board. Mark Senegal there for 46.515. And Davies there with 47.040, half a second faster than Senegal, but of course a lot of times are still to come on in. And who is going to be setting the first bar for all of our drivers to cross in terms of that threshold for that pole lap? Well, as we see Takahashi coming on around, Nick Bader almost at the timeline as well, and Bader going quite quickly out there as we are waiting to see how Takahashi qualifies on through as he makes his way through to the timeline. And will Bader go P6, Takahashi cross the line, goes P2 there on the 46.675. Well, the gap between the top two now 1.5 times, but looking there at P3, Samuel Bernardi, really our big name and star of the Big State Cup in the AM class, flying high, particularly in rounds 2 through to 4 with that triplet of wins, but the qualified pace not quite here at the moment for Bernardi, and I think some damage as well to the car, some quite notable damage there indeed, with that crumpled front bumper and the left hand side of the car from the driver's perspective, and that's not going to be aided him whatsoever on the straights here, where the aerodynamics will be disrupted, and therefore he'll be losing 2 to 3 miles an hour come the top end of the straight. As he powers his way on down, we do look to Ian Henneberry still making his way on to the end of his first flying lap, and in fact we jump on board here with the Bearpoke driver as he takes us around for a lap of the Belle Isle Park circuit. So breaking his way into turn 1, dropping down to 3rd gear as he makes his way through 2, balancing the throttle here on the apex curve and left hander, then carrying the speed on out as he heads his way up towards the braking zone for turn number 3. And charging down towards the braking zone here for the right hand. It's a long run. He'll get up into 5th gear just about, or does he? No, he balances it on the limiter there in 4th gear and decides not to do the upshift in order to save himself some time. Down to 2nd and now into the tightest complex here as he comes into turn number 4. Brings it nice and close to the apex curve, but not too much to send the car sideways. And as he comes into turn 5, a very blind apex as he comes through, but notice how bumpy the road is as well, and that's not good for you as a driver. It really knocks you about in your seat in the cockpit, and therefore you've got more than one thing to manage. You've not just got to manage the attitude of the car, but also those bumps really knocking the suspension around. But he does it nicely as he comes out of 6th, down the back straight, goes up to 4th gear, continues to power up here, heading up towards 5th gear. Will he upshift or will he stay in 4th and hit the limiter once again? He stays in 4th, now starts to bring the car down the gearbox, braking at the 150-yard point, down to 2nd gear, and now through the right into left here as he comes into turn number 8. Very gradually bring the throttle back in 2nd gear, and now coming into turn 9 as he flows through the long left and then into turn 10. Apex tightens up here, but immediately straighten the car and onto the brakes for turn number 11. Hooks it up in 2nd gear, power out, and now up towards turn number 12. Well, now things are a little bit easy. He's gone through perhaps the hardest part of the circuit, but he's still got 2 very nasty corners to take to the chambers as he makes his way through turn 12 into 13, and as he comes to the right hand and bounces the throttle in third gear, head up towards turn number 14, completely flat out now as he heads into the final corner, and will yet to get a time on the board, but as he comes to the line now with only 40 seconds left, well, in fact, a little bit of a connectivity issue there, but it doesn't stop us from seeing his lap time come through. It's a 46.946, and for Henneberry, it's 1.1 seconds off of that overall pole time set by Mark Signal so far, but still, there's plenty of time out there for all of our drivers if they are able to find it, as we do say hello to Jew in the YouTube chat there, and I do believe that is Dan Vitchuk himself saying, dang, I thought he might miss my mess-ups, but indeed, we managed to catch those, Dan. I do apologise for that, but meanwhile, we look to Takahashi heading on through turn number 5 and up towards 6, and Mark Senegal with a 45.843 has really set the bar incredibly high, and Takahashi half a second off at the moment, but Nardi, meanwhile, who's about to come to the timeline, as he comes on through the final corner, well, currently in P5, and he does not improve there. Meanwhile, Ava Dorsey out of nowhere. The Rockefeller race in white, well, that's his qualifying session over with, as we see the pros and the primes are now being released, and Dorsey will be expected to steer clear of them and potentially tow himself to the pits or make his way into the pit lane gradually. But Dorsey, a wonderful lap to move himself up onto the front row of the proverbial AM class, and meanwhile Takahashi heading into turn number 11 at the moment. And has Takahashi got a response? Well, as he comes towards the end, we look to Daniel Sedino heading across the timeline, and as he comes around, he goes up to P5 of 46.456, but nobody within a tenth of Senegal's pole lap, and well, presuming all these laps will stand, of course, that's the one thing we cannot also account for in an iRacing replay file, is potentially laps being invalidated, but Takahashi decides it's not enough and just brings the car in. The only AM driver then on a lap currently is allowed to finish it, because he crossed the timeline before the 7.5 minute clock struck. What we see here in Henneberry coming on 3, he's improved in subsectors 2 and 3, not in subsectors 1 and 4 compared to his previous best. He crosses the line, he's currently P8, and well, in the end, he does not improve. He stays P8 there. It was a 47.140, not enough to improve on his 46.95. So it's Mark Senegal who takes and pole there. We're 45.843. Well, with that in mind now, we now come on to the second half of this qualified session, and this is where things start to get a little bit contentious. The reason we say that, because keep in mind, qualifying is overall position. So if Mark Senegal's lap time, for example, was the fastest that anybody set in this qualified session, he would be on overall pole. But my point is that with that, if he finds himself having a number of primes or even some pro sandwich with himself and Dorsey, I think within a 0.3 of a second window, that is highly possible. He'll get a couple of drives. Senegal could really have just set himself up for the perfect day here today in the city of Detroit by being able to out-qualify his peers. He'll take the bonus points for that, and then he'll be looking to try and charge on for what is the overall result at the end, which is to try and get as high as possible, keep the pros and primes behind, and make himself an absolute target with regards to any AM driver who wants to win the race. Will need to find a way to match his time, and of course that's the one other thing as well. When you're racing in pursuit of another driver, you decide normally to push yourself a little bit harder. You want to try and catch and outpace their lap time, but at a street circuit, the one thing the circuit will punish you for is you push well beyond your racing capabilities or what your pace is able to give you. And as we see Mika Hendricks there, it's a knock to the tyre barrier coming out of turn number 3. We just caught the end of that, not the beginning or the midpoint, but as we see Jerome Padillas coming through at turn number, what is there, turn number 6, and powering on down the back straight now. All the drives on that opening flying laps within the pro and the prime classes. 5 minutes still to go, and well, who is going to be the one who tops the time provisionally on the first strike? Well, we do see Padillas right now coming softly down into turn number 7, but one of our fastest drivers out there on his initial lap, James Logston here, the Team Bearpoke driver, who's at the head of the spear with regards to all the pros and primes as he makes his way at 10-11. A lovely camera shot there that shows you how close they get to the exit wall, and that is the gap to the wall you've got to have if you want to have the ultimate lap time here in Detroit, for the simple reason 1 to 2 millimeters. You want to absolutely be on the ragged edge of what's acceptable, and as he makes his way through the final corner, Logston's gone purple in subsectors 3 and 4 compared to all the AM times, and as he crosses the line, it's an initial lap there of 45.6. Meanwhile, we've got more times coming on in, and everybody right now, absolutely shattering the time set by Mark Senegal. But you can see, look at the damage being done there from P4 to P9 between Senegal and Dorsey as more times come on the board. And already at that point about Senegal potentially putting a number of primes and pros between himself and the rest of the AM class field is definitely being felt. And I can imagine down the paddock right now, Dorsey will be keeping his fingers crossed, and all the team will be hoping that there's not going to be 4 primes between himself and Senegal once this qualifying session is over, because otherwise that is going to be an absolute challenge for the AM driver to try and unpick. And Mark Senegal, conversely, right now must be absolutely jumping up and down, enjoying the pit lane for the simple reason this is looking to be a great qualifying session. But continuing our focus on the pros and the primes here as Julius makes his way into turn 6 once again and comes on out here. Well, his first qualifying lap in the pro class was at a P18 overall, P7 in class. I think he'll feel as though there's a lot more time out there and he's not quite had the opportunity to deliver it. Meanwhile, one driver who's going into this qualifying session late after the spin at turn 3 that saw him into the wall, Mika Hendricks right now yet to get a time on the board, and James Carr as well, as both drivers head on around here. And well, can they potentially find some one-lap magic as we see James Carr in the rear of the picture with a graze to the wall, and it looks as though Carr there may have some suspension damage. The car just slightly wobbling. I think he's more just regaining his senses there after that tap and recognising that's the last thing you want to do. But as he breaks away to turn 3, the car does look hooked up, and as he comes on out now, well, it's all settling down once again. But as we do look back to the start finish line, James Logston coming around here, and he went purple briefly in subsector 4. He goes provisional pole at 44.895, doesn't go purple anywhere, but all of his sectors combined make him go the fastest of everybody. Aaron Lahr meanwhile improves to a P2 there. He's currently 2/10 off at a 45.109. Meanwhile, Adam Ballard in the the Pro-Am class, well, I was about to say he's on provisional pole, and then Edwin Offred comes along and says, well, hold on a second, I've done my lap, and Edwin Offred then goes provisional pole, P2 overall in the Primes on what is there, a 45.09, but these lap times continue to tumble in, and well, as our drivers continue to deliver them, we'll very shortly be jumping aboard with one of our drivers for a fast lap here in the second half of the qualifying, as we see Samuel Cran coming on around in the bare poke machine to cross the timeline. And what's it going to be for Cran? Well, he improves to 47.079, but quite a way off the pace compared to his peers at the moment. Meanwhile, I can tell you one driver who's really lighting up the timing sheets, and Mika Hendricks in the 73 car, and as he heads into the final corner, we jump on board for a flying lap with the pro driver as he crosses the line there. And well, what's the time going to be? P2 so far, and then he goes on to another lap. This will be his final lap, and can he deliver even better as he comes through turns 1 and 2, third gear all the way as he powers out, carries all the speed, and very shortly up to 4th gear. Now getting ready for turn 3. Will he hit 5th gear, or will he stay right on the limiter of 4th? Of course, there's trade-offs either way. Looking to his left-hand side, goes up to 5th gear, and then breaks at the 300-yard board, coming all the way down to 2nd gear, clatters over the apex curve there, dipping the front left tyre, the front right tyre we should say, and as he comes through turn number 4, plenty of apex curve, fights the steering wheel as he catches the car, and then into turn 5, going for a nice early apex here, rides the curve, and you can see how close he was to the exit wall there as he comes into turn number 6. Well, Hendricks is leaving nothing on the table. He is going all in as Jason Landry goes provisional pole with 44.783 overall in the pro class, but Hendricks here right now, well, he's absolutely flying. He's 1.5 tenths off of Landry's time. He's 600ths of a Logston's P2 time, and as he breaks his way down into turn number 7, down to 2nd gear, well, for Hendricks, is there going to be enough to be able to move back onto that front row, because the checker flag is out in this qualifying session. Our drivers are allowed to finish their final lap that they've gone on to. We do have overtime in effect, and as Hendricks breaks his way into turn number 11, nice and timed the apex there, powers out. He's improved in all 3 subsectors so far. He crosses the sector timeline, improves in subsector 4, so it's all going to come down to this final sector, whether A, he's able to improve to pole, and B, whether he just finds himself a little bit further up the order. But as he makes his way up towards the final corner here, completely committed now, he's giving it everything. And what's it going to be as he comes to the timeline? Well, it was P3 previously, and as he crosses, it's pole position for Mika Hendricks on a 44.562. Goodness me, that's 2 tenths faster than anybody else. And can anybody respond to Hendricks' time. Well, meanwhile, speaking of responses here, Tanner Dibble, I think, lacking a little bit of fangs in his response right now. P21 overall, what is P9 in class, and that's where he'll start at the very best. Meanwhile, we've still got plenty of drivers coming on through to complete their session, including James Logsdon, with a grace to the wall there coming into turn number 12. Will Logsdon improve the sub-sector 2, but not improving elsewhere compared to his previous best. And as he heads up towards the timing line, Logan McKenzie, the prime driver, just behind him, and Edwin Onofre, meanwhile, P4, your Pro-Am provisional pole sitter. Logsdon crosses the line, does not improve. Meanwhile, Aaron Lahr comes on through. Does he improve behind Logan McKenzie? No, he does not. Where it looks as though, with that in mind, most of our drivers have finished. Francois Schick does improve there to P8 overall. What is P5 in the Pro class of 45.345. But that looks to be qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. And in the end, it is Mika Hendricks who takes over on pro pole position by 2/10 over Jason Landry. For the first time this season, we have seen Hendricks on pole, and Landry has not been off of the pole position spot for some time. Meanwhile, in the Pro-Am class, it's Edwin Offrow who takes P4 overall, but pole in class. And then in the Am class, it's Mark Senegal with P12 overall, and that is going to translate into a 4-place gap between himself and second place Am qualifier Avon Dorsey there in P16. What a qualified session indeed, and as we do see Tanner Dibble heading through the tight section of turns 9 and 10, gets it on the exit of 10, and for Dibble that is qualifying complete as well. Indeed, qualifying has come to a close, and now we get ready to head to the grid. But what a thriller of a qualifying session as we do take a brief sip of water now. I suspect I'm going to be losing my voice by the end of today's racing. Indeed, all drivers transitioning into their pit boxes, and now they make their way onto the grid, and this is how they line up for today's race. Mika Hendricks takes pole position there for Beaver Buzz Energy on a 44.565 by 2/10 over Sunday GT Turtles Jason Landry. James Logsdon lines up for Bear Pope Racing P3 on the second row, joined by your Pro-Am pole sitter of Alberto Alvarez in the end. So Alvarez taking the pole position, Edwin Offro's time not qualifying, and then Aaron Lahr taking P5 there, starts off our third row, joined by Adam J. Ballard who starts P6 for Rockefeller Racing White. Logan McKenzie starts P7 there, the privateer, joined by Francois Schink, and then on the fifth row it is Beavers Energy's John Lauzon, who is joined by middle of the pack Racing Jedi's Edwin Onofre. Craig Park starts off our sixth row, joined by Avon Dorsey in the end, who is your Am pole sitter for Rockefeller Racing White. And as we continue our way on down the grid, Mark Signal missing out and starting on the seventh row there behind him, P13 for Sunday GT Turtles, joined by Milan Harris for Rockefeller Racing Pink, with the eighth row going to Jerome Bajulas for Beavers Energy and Auguste Blondel for Hassholz Motorsports. Ilya Speaker for Rockefeller Racing Pink, joined by Fernando Takahashi for MOP Jedi and row number 9. And then row 10 is populated by DNA Motorsports Tanner Dibble, joined by Hassholz Motorsports' Daniel Sedano. We have Kurt Klein for Bear Pope Zero, P21, joined on the 11th row by Samuel Bernardi, and it's Ian Henneberry for Bear Pope Zero, and Bear Pope Races Donald Seepeck who line up on row 12. On row 13, Jack Davis for Rockefeller Racing White, joined by Samuel Cram for Bear Pope Racing, and there is Roger Ganesh for Sunday GT Turtles, joined up by Dan Vitchuk on the 14th row. On row 15, contested by Nick Bader and Glenn Bratton, but we have to stop there going through the grid, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the lights. And it's lights out and away we go for round number 7, and Mika Hendricks has a slow start off the line, and Jason Landry will immediately go up the inside. James Logsdon as well. Hendricks just finding a box of neutrals as they make the way out of turn 1. Logan McKenzie as well going on the offensive here, as it looks like Alberto Alvarez having a very slow start, and as they power their way down towards turn 3 for the first time of asking, we can see everybody behind Constantina in with a slow start there off of the third row. But as they make their way down into the braking zone here at the front of the field, you can see as well, look at John Lauzon gaining ground as they all come through the right under a turn number 3. Lauzon take a look up the inside. Alvarez covering off Ballard as they make the way towards turn number 4. Further back there, everybody making it safely through the opening 3 corners, which is lovely to see. Battles are plenty. Donald Seebeck, they're battling with Samuel Cran, and the two Team Bear Pope drivers here having to settle down on who's got the right of way as they make their way too wide into turn number 5. Onto the brakes they go, and it looks though here Seebeck holding the outside line in the 115, and he's going to have the inside into turn 6 to take authority. As we look from the mid-pack back up towards the front of the field, Francois Schick here battling hard with Adam Ballard as they head up towards turn number 7, and will Schick making his way on the outside here as they come past the stationary camera. But I think everybody's starting to settle back down now as they know really it's only one wide once you go into this midsection, and the privateer here carrying the speed on as he goes into turn at number 8. But everybody calm, collected here, and we haven't seen too many tempers fray. But meanwhile, looking back to Roger Ganesh, a slow run off of turn 7, and you can see there how James Carr going outside and around he goes, and meanwhile Ganesh here really having to stick himself into a hold of Dan Vitchett there in the battle for P10 in the AM class with P29 overall as they come on through to complete the small infield section, if you will. Infield in terms of tucking back in. You can imagine the circuit will be a loop otherwise, and as they make their way out to turn number 11 up towards 12. Meanwhile, we look up to the front of the field, and after one lap it is Jason Landry who leads by what is there 3/10 of a second over James Logsdon P2, followed by Mick Hendricks P3, Aaron Lyon P4, holding off your prime leader at the moment of Logan McKenzie, who jumped ahead of Alberto Alvarez on the grid, but in the end, well, now he's under pressure from Alvarez, who's in P6, Francois Schick P7, followed by Adam J. Ballard in P8, the Rockefeller Racing white driver, and a great start to his day. John Lowes on P9 and Edwin Offer in P10, with Avon Dorsey there going a little bit slowly coming out of turn number 2 and dropping all the way down from best the rest of P12 as they make the way onwards this second lap. As they coming out here, Avon Dorsey with a great start, holding on to position as leader of the AM class, but behind there you can see Jerome Bajulaz already starting to eye up the back of Mark Senegal, and I think thinking about making a move here, but Senegal definitely I think worried about the fact that if he lets Bajulaz go through, but he won't to worry now with Bajulaz there having a little bit of a tank slap with the rear kicking round coming at turn at number 5, and as he catches the car in the number 99 he'll know that I think he's just found the threshold of how far he can push there in the run through turns 4, 5 and 6, but as he heads up towards turn number 7, meanwhile up the road Alberto Alvarez here under pressure from Francois Schick, and Schick inching closer here. I think Alvarez will literally be cursing under his breath and say just leave me alone, I want to go hunting after McKenzie, my championship's on the line. But I think also Schick he'll be mindful of the fact that he wants to get through because he wants to go hunting after Aaron Lyon return. And remember of course all drives score points based on overall finishing position, not class position. The only exception is there's bonus points for the podium finishers in the prime and AM classes. We'll get 3 for first, 2 for second and 1 for third, but otherwise it's all about that overall finishing position. It encourages lower class drivers to battle harder with the upper class and vice versa. But meanwhile, as we look back to Tanner Dibble here continues to try and chase down Gus Blondell and make further ground. An awful qualifying session for the DNA Motorsports driver, but now he's trying to make amends. He heads up towards the end of this lap as they power their way on through turn number 14. You can see in the long train of cars here how everyone trying to stay in the tyre at the moment and just maintain the speed as they head onto lap number 3. Just behind Fernando Takahashi with a reasonable qualifying session, but perhaps not the way he wanted it to go. The MOP Jedi driver from Brazil tucked in behind Kirk Lane as they head from 2 and up towards 3. It's going to be a run here from Takahashi. Of course, everybody in equal machinery. And speaking of runs, we look a bit further up the road to Gus Blondell there, having to cover of Tanner Dibble as they go into turn 3. And Dibble, I think, will be confounded by this to a degree as Dibble there just simply waits and watches. Meanwhile, Takahashi now trying to make the move in return, but it's too short of a run there into turn number 4, and the MOP Jedi driver I think just trying to send a small message as there's contact to the wall, and that is a Gus Blondell who gets it wrong coming out of 4, and Dibble finds his way on through. And as they head up towards turn number 6 with Takahashi here finding that with the concertina effect Kirk Lane off pace, and as they cut the corners a car around, and that's Mark Senegal. He's gone round to the XS6, and the 227 driver was battling for the lead to the AM class. It's all gone wrong, and this means that Avon Dorsey now is given a free rein as we look to Dorsey in the Rockefeller Racing White 287 machine. He's P12, and his next closest rival is Gus Blondell, who's in P17. As they make the way up through turns 9 and 10 very shortly. 5 minutes complete, still 25 to go, and we've already had plenty of drama here in Belle Isle as we look back up to the front of the field, and here is Jason Landry trying to hold off with James Logsdon as we ride on board and look back from the rear of the Sunday GT Turtles leader. Now as they head up towards the next lap, going on to their 4th turn under race conditions, what will be on the mind of the Sunday GT Turtles driver right now? Well, for him, he can't think about Logsdon. The thing about racing on a street circuit that's different from a dedicated road racing circuit is when you've got somebody behind you on a road racing circuit, you can afford to look behind you a little bit more and simply think about, okay, is the driver behind me getting close, and am I going to have to start defending? Meanwhile, on a street circuit, you do that and you put your attention in 2 places, and what ends up happening is you're most likely going to make contact with the wall. The best bet the Landry can do. And indeed, one of our ultimate professionals here, and he'll know all about this. But indeed, for all the drivers, they should be wary of this. You just focus on your lines. The driver behind needs to find that advantage and then needs to find somewhere to send the move as well. And the thing is, with this circuit being so tight, Landry will know the exact places where the moves could come. It's at turn 3, turn 7, and also the run all the way round to turn number 1. Limited overtaking opportunities, and if he keeps nailing his exits like this, well, we can see Logsdon be staying here with 2 to 4 attempts the majority of the race, and he may never have the opportunity to actually pick his way through. But as they make the way down the back straight and up towards turn number 7, continue to power the way up through the gearbox, and Hendricks also staying very close behind. And of course, Hendricks will have a bone to pick with the pair in front for the simple reason he started on pole, bogged down at the start, and then just fell back to P3. But this top 3 has broken away 2 seconds already between them and Aaron Lyon P4. And it just goes to show you how hard they're pushing one another, as Hendricks in the 73 all over the back of Logsdon as they come through the right-hander. But meanwhile, we look down the field. Jerome Bajulas there has gone around, and that is at turn number 7. And how he's managed to do that, I think, off the apex curve, potentially. He's just gone round as he tries to turn it round here. He drops all the way from battling to be inside the top 10 to P28. Meanwhile, Francois Sheik's found his way past, what is in fact, I think it's Logan McKenzie. No, it is Francois Sheik has found his way past Alberto Alvarez, and now he's trying to chase down Logan McKenzie as they head on to the next lap. And the privateer here making haste and really continue to try and chase down the opportunity to be inside the top 5 and take the fight to Aaron Lahr to be just outside the pro podium. But as they head on to another lap, meanwhile, we look back to Tanner Dibble, who's been gradually sizing up drivers of other classes. He's away with the back of Ilya Speaker as they head through turn 1 into 2, and as he gets ever closer to the back of his rivals, they head out to 2 now. We can see Avon Dorsey just behind, and Dorsey here will be mindful of the fact that now he's fallen back, and Auguste Blondel is only a second behind. You can see them there all in the long distance camera shot as they get ready to break into turn 3. Dibble looking up the inside here, and Speaker not really fighting this too hard, wary of the fact that Dibble is the faster driver over the entire lap, and therefore he'd only be costing himself and his teammate of Dorsey from the sister Rockefeller Racing team time if they were to battle hard, and therefore they all want to try and work this together. But meanwhile, Hendricks has gone round, and that is at turn 6 on the exit there under the Pure Michigan board. And for the 73 driver, the Beaver Buzz driver, this is going from good to bad to disastrous in the space of 10 minutes of racing. The 73 driver here just cannot get a break. But meanwhile, Adam Ballard here looking to beat on the brakes. Sean Lauzon looking around the outside, but it's not too wide there. They're going to go too wide into turn 8, and as Lauzon holds the inside into the left-hander, they're still going to carry this on into turn number 9. It's brilliant racing, but be careful, boys. For the simple reason it's going to get tighter and tighter, and in the end, Ballard backs off there with an offer right behind him now as they come out of turn number 11. Goodness me, you never see that through turn number 7 into 8, but we've seen it in the GR Cup machines as they make the way into turn number 12 now. We'll offer it behind here. We'll be looking at this and thinking, okay, well, it's going to calm down a little bit, but I want that place as he just misses the wall there and not for it by inches. They're not making contact with the wall as they head the way onto another lap. Well, for Onofre now, it's all about P3 in the prime class here, or P8 overall as he tries to hunt after Ballard as they go into turns 1 and 2. But coming on down here and on to the first extended straight. Meanwhile, third behind Fernando Takahashi here finding himself in a little bit of a tooth and nail battle with Kirk Lane and Auguste Blondel. And for Takahashi as well, this is an opportunity to try and get close to the P2 runner in the AM class. Lane being the prime driver who separates the two right now like a referee in a boxing match as they come on down, because of course Takahashi and Blondel battled hard against one another in the opening couple of rounds of the season. And as they head the way and down here onto the brakes, well, Hendricks meanwhile also trying to make the recovery, but you can see how Blondel covering off the inside here, Lane on the outside, Takahashi looking up the inside, trying to use Blondel as a bit of a battering ram here to give him the space to come through. Takahashi still got his nose alongside, but in the end he has to back off there from Kirk Lane for the simple reason Toodle's not going to underbrake, and he didn't have enough of an overlap. And as they go into turn 5 now, well, things will calm down for a brief while. Meanwhile, speaking of calming down, over the racing line, that's Daniel Cedeno on the inside into turn 5. He's going to lose the speed as James Cole goes around the outside, and Jack Davis now all over the back as Davis has a huge knock to the wall there under braking, and it's going to be an evasion of the wall there on the exit of turn 6. But for Jack Davis, that's not going to be conducive to the health of the car, and indeed his racing ambitions as they make the way down the back straight again. But as they power their way on down, meanwhile we look from them back up to Takahashi here, who now under pressure for Samuel Bernardi. And as we ride on board here with the P4 driver in the AM class, well, the 212 driver has fallen from grace over the last couple of rounds in the fact he was absent, of course, at the commencement of the Midwest Cup, and last time out in Mid-Ohio it didn't quite go his way. Well, he's looking to try and refine that form that really benefited him in the Big State Cup, and right now battling for the last spot on the AM podium with his P18 overall versus Fernando Takahashi, and having to wait and watch here. And Kirk Lane still the cork in the bottle that is preventing Takahashi from hunting down Gus Blondell as they make their way to the end of this lap. But notice how Bernardi here just simply waiting and watching, half a second off as they head across the timing line. And with that in mind, I think the 212 driver is wary of the fact that at some point Takahashi is going to have to force the move on lane, and he wants to be there in case it all goes wrong and the two drivers end up knocking time off one another. But as they come through turns 1 and 2, Bernardi there having an absolutely brilliant run off the apex of 2, gaining 2 tenths alone. And as he heads down towards the braking zone for turn 3, well, Takahashi just stayed on the racing line. Bernardi looks, he goes all in, he comes hot on the brakes here, and goodness me, Samuel Bernardi, well, that was sent from downtown. If he has a first class stamp, he definitely licked and sent it. But what a move, and I think Takahashi then saw it come at the last moment, but I did not expect him to do that. And as he makes his way through turn number 5, well, Bernardi, we said only moments ago he's fallen from grace since the last couple of rounds. Well, I think he might have heard us that, albeit I'm not sure how he's done that through time dilation, but I can tell you that he's heard that, and he has not fallen from grace any longer as he makes his way down the back straight. But as they head up towards turn number 7, I think Takahashi now will be looking at this and thinking, okay, well, I might just have to pull an ace up my sleeve of my own. But meanwhile, as they head up towards the right-hander, we look from them up to the front of the field, and Jason Landry, the Sunday GT Turtles driver, who at one point over the last few laps was only separated with James Logston by half a second, if that, has now opened up a 2.7 second gap. And I think it has come on one of the preceding laps. There has been a mistake from Logston, and it has cost him dear, because they power their way past here into turn at number 1. You see Logston as well has broken away from Aaron Lahr, and Lahr now has got the pressure of Franz Washing and Logan McKenzie behind. Meanwhile, Adam Ballard here making ground versus John Lauzon, and up the inside goes Onofre versus Lauzon, and Lauzon here going to fight this hard, and Onofre is going to be absolutely frustrated with this for the simple reason that now his main rival to battle for P3 in the Prime class has been given all the breathing room to break away. Not that John Lauzon intended it that way, but you can see, look how they've been battling, and Milan Harris now hot on the heels for Onofre. Lauzon on the outside, Onofre on the inside here, and Harris backs off. He plays the safety card there, which is to simply stay in behind and not try to make it. 2 drives up the inside at once, and I think Lauzon continues to try and hunt down that opportunity to chase overall points, but contact with the wall there, and as Onofre comes through turns 4 into 5, I think the car will be a little bit unsettled. You can see some of the damage on the car where he's hit the wall previously as they make their way through turn number 6. Oh, goodness me, and Lauzon there just too close at the worst possible time, and Lauzon's bad luck strikes again as he just made his way out of turn 6, and enough of that whack to the wall, and Lauzon had no way to react then, and goodness me, it's all unfolded in disaster for Lauzon. But meanwhile, as we see here, Ava Dorsey now picking his way past John Lauzon and tucked in behind Elliot Speaker. The AM lead here for Rockefeller Racing White. Well, he's had no misfortune so far as he comes out to 6, into 7 and up to 8. As they power their way through the small sequence now, turns 8, 9 and 10. Meanwhile, we look from them back to Fernando Takahashi. It's all over the back of Samuel Bernardi, and well, only moments ago, of course, we were on board for Bernardi's lunge into turn 3, and now as they come down through turns 8, 9 and 10 into 11 on the brakes here, where I can confirm to you that Edward Nofre is into the pit lane with damage to the car. In fact, it's had to be towed to his pit box. The car's given way after that contact, and John Lauzon, I suspect, may also be needed to come into the pits in the near future, as otherwise missing all those key vital parts on the front of the car is going to cost him a lot of speed as Takahashi takes a knock to the wall there. And well, you can get away with it, it's a flush knock to the wall, but you don't want to do it multiple times because eventually that suspension will start to suffer, and that rear left tyre right now, Fernando Takahashi's, I wouldn't be surprised if it's starting to show signs of not being appreciated, because that was a nasty knock, and well, that is going to cost him dear in the long haul. But meanwhile, we look back up to the battle for P3 overall, and well, this is Francois Schink now who's been promoted there with everything that's happened. But the thing for Francois Schink at this point in the race is, with Aaron Lahr being passed and Logan McKenzie coming on through, McKenzie once again after the P2 finish over at Mid-Ohio of course, your prime winner there, but P2 overall finish, which was a huge number of points. We can see it flash his lights there. Logan McKenzie absolutely unsatisfied with just leading the class and being inside the top 5. He wants another overall podium. He wants the points, and Alberto Alvarez coming through like a rocket here, as there's a bit of contact, and he's still got the space, and the Pan Am Racing driver makes it work in an absolutely death-defying move, and Aaron Lahr there did everything he could to squeeze Alvarez, but in the end Alvarez said, right, I've had enough, I am coming through whether you like it or not, and Aaron Lahr only had one thing to do in him, which was given the space to do so, and Alvarez is into P5, still P2 in the prime class, but now he's got a clear shot once again at chasing down Logan McKenzie, the prime leader, as they make the way through turns at 12 and 13, but as they come on around here and up towards 14. Meanwhile, further back, Ava Dorsey now putting the pressure on Ilya Speaker in front here, and I think trying to say to Speaker, look, you're going to need to get a little bit of a move on, because if we look 5.5 seconds back here, his second place AM driver, Gus Blondell, and in terms of relative pace, well, Blondell has not been on the pace of Dorsey for the last couple of laps, so I think right now the Hassel's Motorsports driver will be more wary of Kirk Lane behind and Fernando Takahashi trying to gradually gain ground, but meanwhile we look to James Carr on the inside here of Samuel Bernardi, but in the end he can't quite find it and has to back off there on the run. Meanwhile, John Lauzon being attacked on the inside there by Nick Bader. In fact, he's trying to go around the outside of Bader, and Lauzon there in a very bold move. Again, you don't normally see moves around the outside here, but he's made it work, and will Lauzon back into P26, will continue to try and make ground. Meanwhile, a bit further up the road as they all power their way on through it, and Bader crossing the line in P27 currently. Dan Vitchuk here as we look up towards the run to turn 3. Vitchuk in the black car in the right hand side of your screen will be passed there by Willis Julas and also Samuel Grant, but staying in P22. And right now, well, you can imagine as we've got a car round there and interrupt that fall. That's Daniel Sedano's gone round on the exit 3. You can see the tyre marks down. I think just carried a bit too much speed in the bounce off the curb. Tried to get the power down. The traction just was not there. And now, well, we can see just in front of it, Samuel Bernardi coming on through, holding on to P7 in the AM class right now. Well, in P22 overall, he's got James Carr right behind. And I think this pressure is not a comfortable amount of pressure as he heads up towards turn number 6, but meanwhile as they make the way out, only moments ago we saw Bernardi of course running all the way up in the podium positions, and will Bernardi with what seems to have been some sort of error, it has cost him very dear as he drops a long way down. In fact, he's had an off track somewhere, we haven't quite seen it on camera for the 212 driver, and it was on at lap number 9, so on the lap he's gone on to, but it's all unfolding, and now he's got it all to do as he tries to hold of James Carr here, and James Carr of course having qualified in such a difficult spot, starting all the way back in P32. Will James Carr now trying to pick his way up inside the top 20, but as they make the way on around it into turn 11, we jump aboard the gearbox of the privateer Bernardi. You can see that James Carr looking ever close, ever threatening, but with the damage on the front of the car on that front right hand side, well, Carr's going to suffer on the straights. Bernardi as well, we're not sure if there's any damage on the car from where he's had his incident, but as they make the way through 12 and 13, Carl getting the better speed off the corners, but this is where, as they transition up through the gearbox, the damage we felt on Carl's machine, because as they head through 14, he gets rid 2 attempts here, but I don't think he's got enough of a run into turn 1 unless he sends it. No, he backs off here and decides to try and get a good run through the double corner sequence in order to try and get the run up towards turn 3. Bernardi there overcooks it under braking into 2, and that's what James Carr needs as they make the way down in the charge here, but James Carr will be on the outside. It's a drag race to the braking zone, and will Bernardi here will try and keep his best foot in, or his best nose in we should say, with regards to staying on the inside, and goes all in on the brakes here. Carr goes round the outside, meanwhile just behind there Lauzon looking around, but it's a knock to the tyre band there for John Lauzon. The Viva Bus Energy driver loses the place to Daniel Salino rather than gaining on Roger Ganesh as they come out to turn 4 and up towards 5 they go, but meanwhile we look from there back up towards the top 3, and here is Franz Marschik, P3 driver right now over and in the pro class, but he has got the prime pair of Logan McKenzie and Alberto Alvarez behind. Indeed, that is quite the traffic jam that is now building, because Milan Harris and Aaron Lahr are on the back of this as well. Harris is a little bit further back, but Aaron Lahr right on the heels of it as the 4 drivers here, the quartet if you will, all pushing on, giving one another motivation, with Harris not too far off, 2 seconds back. You can imagine that the Rockefeller Racing Pink driver able to get close enough to this, he would salivate his prospects at a potential run for the win in the prime class. He's currently P3 in said class, but as they head on to the next lap, 20 minutes complete by the time they get down to turn number 3, still another 10 minutes to go, and this is where tyre degradation starts to have a factor. Of course, we see 20 minutes of flat-out racing here in this spread, but our drivers will be wary of the fact the tyres will now have worn quite a bit, and therefore they won't be as fresh as they used to be, and therefore, whilst the car's got less fuel in it, which means it'll be a much lighter car with tyres that are not going to grip up as much, it's a very potent but also a very risky combination. Push it too hard, and you may find yourself going on a round before you know it. Aaron Lahr right now tucked to the back of this group. I think really having to play the patience game here and see when the mistakes may occur for Alvarez and McKinsey, and when it opens up the door for him to chase down Schink once again. But as he powers his way on through, meanwhile back to Hendricks here, and Hendricks of course with the spin earlier on at this quarter turn at number 6, and continue to recover his race for Bill's Energy, now P5 in the Pro class, P9 overall. His next target is Adam J. Ballard, who's in P8, their Pro-Am driver, and he'll be hunted after Harris before he finally catches up to another Pro driver of where's Aaron Lahr. But Hendricks all over the back of his competitor here as they head up towards turn number 8. But where will he find the move? I think he's going to have to find it in the run to turn number 1, unless he can find a prospect of getting the run on the inside of a given corner. But as they make the way down, Hendricks there goes deep, and he swings the car just back onto the racing line in time, but the car almost giving way to him as they make the way out to turn number 11 and down towards 12 they go. But Hendricks there really pushing the metal and pushing it a bit too far. But meanwhile looking back to John Lauzon, battling side by side with Roger Ganesh here. Ganesh on the inside as they come towards turn number 7. Ganesh backing off there, letting Lauzon go, and just not worrying too much about battling the Pro driver. I think he's got bigger fish to fry in his mind with regards to battling with Daniel Sedano all over the back of him in the battle for P8 in the AM class, P25 overall as they come on through at turn number 9 into 10. But coming on down and onto the brakes for 11 here, Ganesh with a nice run off the corner. Lauzon, oh goodness me, and it's not a nice run, there's further contact as Sedano tries to take evasive action, but grazes the side of Ganesh's car, and I wonder how much damage Sedano's got. Well, Ganesh ran a nasty knock to the tyre barrier, that's not going to do the car any good. And meanwhile, as we look up from one AM driver who's in the wars to another driver who's battling hard here, a Gus Blondell P2 in the AM class, P14 overall, he's got on his inside there, Kirk Lane, and Lane trying to come back here. These two have been battling for some time. Lane up the inside, gets it done. Meanwhile, Ian Henneberry around the outside of Fernando Takahashi, and Takahashi loses the rear of the car over the turn 3, and well, pointed the wrong way at the moment. He's got to wait to turn it around, but he'll gradually bring it on through. He'll have a bit of space to do so shortly, but it's a painful experience here. We've just got to simply wait and respect the fact other cars are going to be coming through, and well, he's got to wait for that 5 to 10 second window in order to get the car turned around. Meanwhile, Hendricks there making his way past Harris up the inside into turn 7. Another place game for the Bivas Energy driver in this recovery drive. But the key point of speaking about the AM class is we do come back to Ian Henneberry for a brief moment. Keep in mind that Henneberry started all the way down in P23 on the grid, P7 in the AM class. He's now back up into the podium places, P16 overall, P3 in the class, and the Bear Pope Zero driver once again reflecting on what was a brilliant day at Mid-Ohio, really bringing to life that pace that has come with the Midwest Cup for him as the 237 driver presses on here down into turn at number 11. But as he comes on down through, we've got a mistake there for a driver, and I believe that may have been, as we try to understand it, they're pointed the wrong way, whoever it is. That's a Gus Blondell. Blondell was gone round at turn number 12, and Henneberry suddenly in P2 there, and for Blondell just an error for turn 12. I don't think there was any contact with another driver, but the car pointing the wrong way, and he's got to wait an eternity to turn it around. He's still got cars going through. In fact, P24 is going to come around the corner shortly. That'll be Nick Bader, and then he may just be able to get it turned around in time before P25 Takahashi. But no, in fact, Takahashi comes on through, and this for Blondell, he just can't turn the car. He's got to wait, and now he can finally turn. Driver's coming out the corner there, but he's just got enough space to do so, and that goes to show you when you get it wrong here how much involved. And Adam Ballard the same. A lot of drivers are getting it wrong. Ballard's gone round at his turn number 3, and well, thankfully he'll be able to turn it back round shortly. Well, in fact, he may not now, as we see everybody coming on through. But meanwhile, one driver's lost in another gain, and Craig Parks has now moved up for the privateer outfit there. He's moved up into P7 overall and P3 in the Prime class, as we see Flapjack 24/7 or 247 they're saying in the YouTube chat. It's like someone is dropping oil out there. Well, I don't think there's any oil, but I do get your point there. It does seem as though with these very light cars and with the tire degradation picking up, the car's now really sliding on around, that rear end coming loose with these 230 horsepower front-engine rear-wheel drive machines. Very thin wheelbase to them. They're very light on the rear axle, and indeed they just dance about under braking, and many a driver getting caught out. Also keep in mind that typically the setups we've seen are run in this series not using traction control, even though ABS and traction control are available for these Cup cars, but the traction control is off, and our drivers as is are really having to balance that throttle pedal. But as Parks here makes his way through turn number 12 and up towards 14 he goes. Tanner Dibble behind, but his main concern will be Ilya Speaker, who's down in P10 if he's worried about the next driver in the prime class, and will Dibble coming on through it. Even Dorsey a little bit further back, and Dorsey now up inside the top 10 as we do see Dorsey making the way across the timeline, and the 287 driver here really enjoyed a good run of form, and this was the form that just slightly eluded him last time out at Mid-Ohio, but round number 6 wasn't to be laughed at. As meanwhile, well, that's no laughing matter there. Francois Schick in contact with what's Alberto Alvarez, the two of them trying to go into the one apex, and Schick paying the price for it. Well, I think there might be a little bit of discussion to the stewards after that one, but the point is Alberto Alvarez keeping Schick at bay, and now Logan McKenzie up to P3 overall. Well, he's going to feel as though here it's going to be another podium overall on the cards, and Alberto Alvarez right there behind him as they make the way down the back straight. 4 minutes still to go by the time they hit turn number 7. And for Alvarez here, well, it's going to be a huge pool of points, but he wants it to go the other way. He wants to be the one who's ahead of McKenzie, not behind, for the simple reason things finish as they are now. McKenzie will put even more space between the pair of them in the championship battle, both in the Midwest Cup and overall. But as they head down through turn number 9 and 10 at this time, we can see Alvarez here just keeping it smart, keeping it simple. I think very wary of the fact he may have heard reports of a number of drives going on around, and also with that contact between himself and Francois Schick, has that done any damage to the car? And well, meanwhile, speaking of drivers who've gained from instance, Aaron Lard back into P3 in the Pro class as he makes his way in P5 there overall. And we see Craig Parks here with Tanner Dibble and Francois Schick behind. And Dibble now, I think, will be ducking in and deciding to try and keep Schick behind him for the remainder of this race, given the fact that Dibble has made 12 places since the start of this race, 4 places in class, and well, the pace is not going away at all for the DNA Motorsport driver as they head on to another lap. But meanwhile, we do look to John Lauzon, and Lauzon around again, and that this time is at turn number 7. Oh, goodness me, and Nick Bader there tries to take evasive action as Lauzon tucks the car back in. Bader finds Lauzon's car and the wall, and for Nick Bader, I think that may be damage which could just completely break his race. We'll have to see, but it does look as though the car really struggling as he breaks his way into turn number 11, and will Lauzon there, no malice meant by it, but Bader's race, I think, definitely is now coming to a halt as he heads in towards turn number 12 on the inside there, and that car, I think, is heading for the pit lane. There is no doubt about it. He's struggling to bring it on around. He's trying to keep it as tight as possible to the inside lines of the racing line, and as he heads on through, well, John Lauzon, I think, will follow him here. And in fact, Bader's going to stay out there and go to the end potentially, but Lauzon is into the pit lane. And meanwhile, as they head on around, Mark Senegal a bit further back in, one of the biggest losers of today in terms of places. He started off, of course, back in what was P2 in the AM class, and right now running in P11 as he battles there with Gus Blondell. And as we see him try to go a bit deep, that's Billman DaCosta, who is a lap down effectively after an opening lap instant, cost him quite dear. And Senegal here trying to go around the outside of Blondell. I think you'll easily get this, as I think Blondell missing the hood of the car, or the bonnet of the car, will be losing about 5 miles an hour come the end of the braking zone run. And as he comes into turn number 3, Senegal goes around the outside, moves into the top 10 of the AM class, back into P10, P23 overall. But this has not been a strong day for the Sunday GT Turtles driver as he heads up towards turn number 5. But as they make the way on through what will be their penultimate lap, meanwhile, going on to his final lap of today, Jason Landry leading this race by a margin of 2.6 seconds over James Logsdon, and with the Sunday GT Turtles driver right now holding a comfortable position in terms of that gap, but Logsdon keeping him honest all the way through. And well, now it all comes down to who makes an error, if any, or will they just finish as they are as he heads up towards turn number 5. Meanwhile, we look back to the battle here between our pro drivers of Francois Schick and Tanner Dibble. Dibble on the left of your picture, Schick on the right of your picture. They're battling for P4 in the class, and there's contact between Schick and Dibble, and Schick there, when he found contact with Alvarez a couple of laps ago at the same corner on the outside, and Schick not too pleased about that. I think he'll feel as though that Dibble was very forceful there, very elbows out, and for Francois Schick now, it's all about getting the car home. I think a couple of knocks like that, plus a scrape with the wall, well, the car's going to be in much less good condition position compared to how it started. But meanwhile, he heads on through. Avon Dorsey there, just closing up behind gradually. P9 overall, your AM leader, as he comes on around out to turn at number 6 and really enjoying a spectacular day. But as we do look to Dan Victory here, close him down. Samuel Cran in the battle for P15 overall. It's the P4 AM driver versus the P6 Prime driver. I don't think there's going to be too much more change on the cards. But meanwhile, speaking of lack of changes to come here, well, unless he gets it wrong with the final corner, which I doubt it, Jason Landry here's had another flawless day. Wasn't on pole, but he took the lead of the race early on with Hendricks bogging down at the start, and he's never let it go. And as he comes through the final corner, Jason Landry is your winner at the Belle Isle Detroit Grand Prix by 3.2 seconds overall in the Pro class over James Logston, with the Team Bearpo Racing driver finishing ahead of Logan McKenzie, who takes P3 overall and the win in the Prime class, just ahead of rival Alberto Alvarez there for Pan Am Racing P4. Aaron Lark comes on through to complete the Pro class there on the podium in P3 in the class. P5 overall ahead of Craig Parks, who completes the Prime podium. And as we see Dibble, Shing and what is there, Dorsey coming on through. Avon Dorsey takes the win in the AM class, his maiden win of the series for Rockefeller Racing White in dominant fashion. In the speaker, P10 as he comes to the line for Rockefeller Racing P, and then best of the rest, P11, but P2 in the AM class continue to rise up the podium in Hennebury there for Bear Pope Zero, ahead of Kirk Lane with Jerome Pageau's P13, and it is Jack Davis who finishes third place in the AM class on the podium for Rockefeller Racing. Right, so P1, P3 in the class for them, ahead of Samuel Cran, P15, and then Dan Victor just off the AM podium, but P16, P4 in class, he'll be pleased with that. Samuel Bernarde, P17. Afterwards, perhaps one of the moves of the season, the 212 driver falling foul midway through the race and out to finish P5 in class, P17 overall. Daniel Sedino, P18 there for Hassel's Motorsports, ahead of Roger Ganesh, who comes on through to take P19 for Sunday GT Turtles. And it'll be Fernando Takahashi who comes on around to make the completion of the top 20 there, missing the rear wing and a lot of parts of the MOP July car. And then it will be Mark Senegal who comes on home at P21 ahead of Glenn Bratton, with Donald Sepek in P23. As we see here, the Bearpo Racing Machine also severely damaged there, and I believe just behind, that is none other than, well, it's not Nick Bader. They were just trying to understand which car that is by one of the Bear Pope cars. But as they make the way across, I think that's Billman DaCosta who finished a lap down the end at P28. Indeed, it is confirmed to be Billman DaCosta. And we have had Nick Bader recently come on through after James Carr to finish P25 there, the privateer. James Carr P24, Augusta Ballou P26, and Adam J. Ballard P27. We also did have 5 retirements in the form of John Lauzon, Milan Harris, Mika Hendricks, Edward Offred, and Albert Brand. But as we do see all the drivers making the way around gradually here and in towards the pit lane, it has been another strong showing from Jason Landry. And what we said at the start of today, if he picked up the win, it would mean that he'll have a 1 race advantage going into the second half of this season, and he has found that advantage. He has delivered the goods today, and as Orvo tries to make the way, and a spin there on the start-finish line. He knows what he's done. He's very pleased with that. There's no question about it. And now the number 5 driver, well, I think the mechanics won't be too pleased with that knock to the tyre barrier there. That is with the concrete barrier, we should say. That's going to cost them a bit of money to repair. But as Jack Davis makes his way through the final quarters in towards the pit lane, for the Rockefeller Racing White driver, it has been a long time coming to see him back on the podium. And Avon Dorsey stealing the show for the team in the AM class by taking the win. But there's no question about it. Rockefeller Racing White enjoying their racing in the AM class at this time, really coming alive. And meanwhile, for Mark Senegal, it has not been a day to remember the Sunday GT Turtles drive. It's just not worked out, but he's still got plenty of rounds to go. And the AM Championship has been blown wide open, with Fernando Takahashi finishing P18 class, P20 overall. It is all up for grabs once again. And, well, we'll have to give you an update on those standings next round. But with all our racing complete, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to bring you those race results. And I believe these are all subject to stewards' inquiries. So we can see here, after 30 minutes of racing in today's sprint race at the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle Park, Jason Landry taking the win in the end for Sunday GT Turtles by 3.2 seconds over Bear Pope Racing's James Logston. Logston kept him honest all the way through the race and was right on his heels for the opening 10 minutes, but I think a brief mistake and Landry just building the pace saw your winner run away. Logston, meanwhile, driving to a brilliant P2 once again, going to show the Bear Pope Racing driver has got it all under wraps and control with regards fast at grind pace, and Logan McKenzie there once again on the podium overall in the Prime machine. The privateer there, P3, just holding off Alberto Alvarez to the line by 3/10 of a second. The Pan Am Racing driver there, right on the heels of his main championship rival. This isn't the way he's wanted it to go, because it means McKenzie will continue to grow his advantage. Aaron Lahr, P5, the privateer, completed the pro podium there, and a good drive from him ahead of Craig Parks, who finishes off the pro podium in P6. And then it's Tanner Dibble from DNA Motorsports, who came through the field to finish P7, P4 in the pro class, ahead of Francois Schenk, who had a difficult day, and I think we could be finding a bit of contention with the fact he was given the elbow out multiple times at turn number 3 on that outside line. Eamon Dorsey, with his first win of the season in the AM class, finished P9 overall. That would be a huge amount of points for the Rockefeller Racing white driver, and definitely jumped them up the standings rapidly towards the bottom of the top 10, with Ilya Speaker there completed the top 10 for Rockefeller Racing Pink, ahead of Ian Henneberry, the Bear Pope Zero driver. Not quite a top 10 overall, but he'll be pleased to be best of the rest, and also P2 on the AM podium, ahead of teammate Kirk Lane, who finished P12, and then Jerome Bajula's P13, the Beaver Buzz Energy driver, falling down the order early and having to battle his way back up the order, and finish ahead of Jack Davies, completing the AM podium, the Rockefeller Racing white driver, with another strong showing today, ahead of Samuel Cram for Bear Pope Racing. Just wasn't to be his in terms of that qualified pace. It translated into not quite being on the prime pace in the race, but still he'll take those points ahead of Dan Vitchett, the privateer, who beat Samuel Bernardi to the post of P16, Bernardi P17, Daniel Sedina for Households Motorsports P18, and I think you'll feel as though it was a blown opportunity today given the way everything played out. But as we continue to look down to outside the top 20, Roger Ganesh P19 for Sunday GT Turtles, ahead of Fernando Takahashi, the middle of the pack Jedi driver there, seeing a podium slip away, and in the end that means his championship lead will definitely now be severely weakened. Mark Senegal as well losing out a lot of momentum today, P21 for the Sunday GT Turtles driver, and not many points on the board there in the AM class, ahead of fellow AM Glenn Bratton. And then we have Bear Pope Racing's prime driver of that Donald Seapack P23, head of the pro James Carr P24, and then Auguste Blondel ahead of Nick Bader to complete all of our finishers on the lead lap, finishing P25 and P26 respectively. Finishing a lap down in, Adam Ballard for Rockefeller Racing White, Bear Pope Zero's Billman DaCosta P28 classified, and as we continue to look down, we can see there John Lauzon retiring 2 laps in the end for Beaver Buzz Energy, ahead of Milan Harris, who also retired 2 laps in the end for Rockefeller Racing Pink, and then Mika Hendricks for Beaver Buzz Energy retiring 4 laps in the end in what was looking to be a superb day, but it all looked great in qualifying. It turned into disaster in the race, and well, he'll be looking to bounce back next time out. And then Edward Offer P32, the retirement for middle of the pack Jedi, 7 laps in the end, joined by his teammate Albert Brown there, P33, with the retirement 14 laps from the finish. But one absolute thrill of a race there, and I have to agree with Ian Henneberry in the YouTube chat. I believe that's Ian H there, saying, well, enjoying the broadcast there, and thank you for that, Ian, but a killer race indeed, an absolute thriller of a race from start to finish. And Speedtech there saying hell of a drive from Jason Landry in the YouTube chat, and Miss Kitty Louise also congratulated Jason Landry. But congratulations to all of our drivers, and a special congratulations to our podium finishers and our race winners. But with that, of course, it does mean that our racing for today has concluded, and as we do get the standings up there by accident, we do apologise for that. That does seem to be a little bit of a technical glitch. It is time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the middle of the pack racing league community in terms of all the series we run and everything else in between, then why not check out our official Discord there. Our Discord invite link available on screen. And why would you want to join the Discord? Well, if you ever want to be a part of our series, it's a mandatory requirement. You do need to be part of the Discord. And also you can interact with all the drivers and all the different teams there and get to know the friendly folks at Middle of the Pack Racing League. Alternative, if you just want to follow us on social media, the best place to do so is our official Twitter. And that is at twitter.com/MOP Racing. But of course, now we look ahead to next time, ladies and gentlemen. And next time, it will be the second of our 3 feature races of the season, because we wrap it up in the Midwest State Cup and none other than the Wisconsin State Circuit of Road America, round number 8, and we'll be bringing you all the racing action as if it were live on Sunday, the 12th of March, 2023. Save the date, because we'll be bringing the curtain down on another cup, and well, Jason Landry looks to be firmly in control of the Pro Cup. There's no question about it. But can Logan McKenzie still stay one step ahead of Alberto Alvarez to the finish of the Prime? And in the AM class, who will be your AM Cup champion? Because it has been blown wide open from today, and we now have 10 drivers drivers who can theoretically win the AM Cup. All that and more next time, but until then, we have in the middle of the pack Racing League. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay well, stay smiling, stay safe, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.